Why are there so many versions of Christianity in the world today? And why are there so many religions? If there truly is one creator, one Father, then why is it that there's so much confusion about him, his creation, and his existence? Jesus came down from heaven to teach us. But remember, he only taught for 3 years. And he was frustrated with his disciples because they didn't really understand who he was or what his message was. He told his closest disciples, I have so much more to teach you, but you cannot bear what I have to say. So I will send the Spirit of truth to teach all the truth. Now that promise has been fulfilled numerous times since Jesus left us. The first of these was Origen of Alexandria, who taught for 50 years, explaining all the teachings of Jesus, explaining how they fit into the Old Testament, how they fit into philosophy, into Judaism. I've written a lot about Origen of Alexandria and talked about his story. But the other thing that Jesus said, he warned us of the priests, the scribes, and the church leaders, as did his prophets. They warned us about corruption of the teachings of the prophets and the teachings of Jesus. Jesus warns us about anybody who puts themselves between us and the Father and who leads us away from heaven. And this is the reason why there are so many different interpretations of the Bible and of the prophetic works from Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam. If there truly is one Father, then they all should be teaching the same thing, correct? I've studied 3 other appearances of the Spirit of Truth, more in recent history, starting with Johannes Greber in the end of the 1800s, going on to Reverend Vale Owen in England, the beginning of the 1900s, and then on to Beatrice Brunner, who started her teachings at the beginning of the multimedia era, allowing all of the teachings to be recorded. And this is important, and I'll come back to that in a minute. What Greber was a Catholic priest who lived in Germany through World War I, and he helped many escape the horrors of World War I. But he was visited by a young man whom which a Spirit of Truth used as a medium to teach Greber. The Spirit of Truth explained all the corruption of the Bible done by the Catholic Church by limiting what was in the Bible, by twisting the words of the Bible. And so Greber was at a dilemma. He said, how can I still be a priest knowing how corrupt Catholicism is? But he decided to stay and try and change the teachings within the church. But Rome didn't like what he was teaching, so they ended up kicking him out of the church. And he created the Johannes Greber Foundation, where his teachings were held and distributed in the United States and in Europe. And Greber is a very interesting study because he taught the same thing that Origen taught, and he also taught the same thing that Reverend Vale Owen taught, and Beatrice Brunner. But it's an interesting study because of what happened to his works. After he died, someone bought the rights to his teachings. And we have perfect documentation of how these teachings were changed from one edition to the next of his books. And we see specifically how the Bible, how the teachings of the prophets were changed by the scribes who copied them. It doesn't take great changes to change the meaning of text. Sometimes it's just a word, a single or a the left out can change the meaning, or changing the to not. I've documented this on my website, showing the differences between the editions of Greber's work which were published. And it's just astounding to see how from one edition to the next, the meaning was completely changed by just a few words. This is the importance of the work of Beatrice Brunner, because this work was all recorded, first on audio tape and then on videotape. And so anybody can go back and look at the original recording and compare it to what was printed. And yes, there were mistakes that were made, but they've been corrected. And that's very important to know, that the original teachings are still available to hear. Reverend Vale Owen is a different study and a different outcome, because in England, the followers of the Greater World organization, which he started, were more interested in the phenomena of mediumship. And so what happened was the Spirit of Truth backed away, because the Spirit of Truth wasn't interested in spirituality or spiritism. They were interested in teaching. And since the audience wasn't receptive to the teachings, the Spirit of Truth left. This also happened in early Christianity. People were more interested in talking to the Spirit of Truth to learn about their personal issues. And so slowly the Spirit of Truth backed away and stopped teaching, because they weren't interested in the unbearable truth that Jesus promised to send. I've said in other videos what that unbearable truth was, and that is that the reason that humanity exists is because it's a mechanism to reteach virtue to all of the fallen souls, the billions of trillions of fallen souls who have inhabited the material creation since the beginning of time, billions of years. this restoration process has been going. And that is an unbearable truth, that we are here because of something we personally did, not because Eve ate an apple. It's because we personally rejected the laws of God and we were cast out of heaven. And that is the unbearable truth that Origen taught and was destroyed by the Roman Empire. The same teaching that Johannes Greber taught, which was twisted by forces in this world, is the same teaching that came through Vale Owen, but his followers didn't want to hear it either. And it's the same teaching that was taught through Beatrice Brunner. But fortunately, we have those recordings. We have those documents that we can read and test the Spirit of truth, to test that the Spirit of truth comes from Jesus. They all taught the same unbearable truth, and the world has rejected it because it is unbearable. It's much easier to believe what Christianity is teaching today, that all you have to do is believe in Jesus and everything is wiped clean, that everything is good. That's not the way it works. Reincarnation is a fact of life, and karma is a fact of life, because we, as Jesus said, need to repay our debts to the last farthing. So what we do wrong in this life, we carry into the next life, and we have to make good. So all I can suggest is don't leave anything unforgiven in this lifetime. Forgive everybody, because you don't want to be straddled with that karma in the next lifetime. You don't want to have to revisit that trauma, that relationship in the next lifetime. That's where the suffering comes from in this world. And the suffering is just suffering, because we have to restore our virtue. And restoring virtue is a visceral activity. It's not cerebral. It might be easy to say, okay, I'm a virtuous person, but you have to be tested and tested and tested, as Jesus was tested in his life. So the deeper meaning of Jesus's teaching of saying, follow me and you'll achieve eternal life, it means walk in his footsteps, not just believe in him, but follow him. He said we need to be perfect as God is perfect. And that's what we have to do, is follow his footsteps. This is hard for Christians to understand. It's hard for atheists to understand. But it is the only explanation that's logical of why this world is so painful. Why is it so much suffering in this world? Why it's existed for billions of years? Because this process is a long, slow process. As Origen taught, and has been taught by other spirits of truth throughout time. But on the other hand, it is called the good news for good reason, because it is a sure path back to heaven, back to where we came from. And in the grand scheme of things, eternal life is much different than a few decades living as a human.